NASCAR is about to enter a new era unlike anything you've seen before. Racing history is about to take a new turn as Sunday Night Lights hits the mid-90s. And we are back. The story continues on the next edition of Sunday Night Lights. In this video, we will cover the 1993 through the 1995 season across the IROC, Busch Series, and NASCAR Winston Cup Series. And let me tell you right now, you might want to strap in because things are about to get a little wild. You thought we left off 1992 being a little wild. Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive into 1993. So let's start with the schedule for 1993. As discussed in the last video, due to the 1992 Superspeedway disaster, Talladega is off the schedule temporarily for 1993. But NASCAR is currently working with Talladega to see about what they can do to make the racing safer there with hopes of an eventual return. They are hoping to return for 1994. And thanks to the events of the Superspeedway disaster, here's what's taking over Talladega's dates for now. Texas World will get a second date, and the other will go to Sonoma, another road course out in California. The other major change involves the Pepsi 400 Summer Race, as NASCAR announced that race will be moved to the Daytona road course. There are no other changes besides New Hampshire also being added to the 1993 schedule, just like in real life. And here's a look at the full schedule for the Cup Series, Busch Series, and IROC Series for 1993. Another thing to note is the All-Star Race will take place at the Nashville Fairgrounds for 1993 as NASCAR continues to rotate its All-Star Race date. Without further ado, now let's get into silly season. Here's how things shape up for 1993. Only a few things for the Busch Series. Jimmy Spencer decides to move back down to the Busch Series to drive for Sam Mart's team in the 00. He's hoping for a good turnaround and an eventual march back to the Winston Cup Series. Rick Mast also follows Jimmy Spencer back down to the Busch Series. He will take over the number 61 that's co-owned by B.R. DeWitt and former Busch Series champ Richie Evans. Other things to note, Clifford Allison is driving the Bobby Allison number 84 in the Busch Series, currently being sponsored by Diet Pepsi. Allison hopes to be in the Cup Series within the next couple of years. And Shauna Robinson is driving the number 45 for Sabco, also getting a lot of mentoring from Patty Moyes. As for the Winston Cup, as you previously seen, Jeff Gordon moves up to the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, sticking with Bill Davis in the new number 1 McDonald's Ford, and they've gotten a lot of funding from the Blue Oval. Will Jeff Gordon live up to the hype? Rob Moroso and his family team announce a new alliance with Richard Childress Racing, as they will be working close with them, which could be a major benefit in funding, as well as sponsorship with Haviland coming over to sponsor Moroso and leaving Robert Yates Racing. Moroso is looking to have a big season in 1993. As noted before, Jimmy Spencer is moving down to the Busch Series and was let go at Robert Yates Racing, and Bobby Labonte will come in to compete for Rookie of the Year, with Slim Jim coming on board to sponsor the number 28 Ford. Meanwhile, Joe Nemechek will move up to the Winston Cup as well. He replaces longtime driver Jeff Bodine in the number 5 Tide Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports, as Hendrick is looking to bounce back this season. Meanwhile, Jeff Bodine moves over to the Precision Products Racing Ford with the car newly renumbered to 01. Hutch Strickland is back in the number 94 for Hagen Racing, but also has a new sponsor with him in DuPont. With Danny Marshall's departure from NASCAR, Lake Speed and Terry Schoonover agreed to buy out the team from Marshall to form SS Motorsports. Lake Speed picks up Target as a new sponsor after having a career year in 1992. Meanwhile, Terry Schoonover remains in the 83. And while on this topic, we'll go back to the Busch Series for a moment. Grant Adcox is now driving the 85 like he has been, but now it's under his own team. IGA becomes the new sponsor of his car. Ted Musgrave is also finally moving up to the Cup Series as he replaces Greg Sachs in the number 18 Hardy Chevrolet for Paul Newman. This team is looking for a major turnaround in 1993. Derek Cope also moves to the number 98 for Cale Yarborough. 1991 Daytona 500 winner Eddie Bierschwell is back in the number 8 Ford for the Stavola brothers with Ray Bestos as the sponsor. Bill Elliott is still in the number 9 Coors Ford for Harry Melling. Darrell Waltrip is back for another year in the number 11 for Junior Johnson with teammate Sterling Marlin in the 22. Davey Allison, the 1991 champion, is still driving the number 12 Ford for his dad's team with Mountain Dew as the sponsor. Clifford Allison, as mentioned earlier, will also run a second car in a part-time schedule. 1990 champion Mark Martin is still with Bud Moore in the number 15 Ford. Dale Jarrett is back with Joe Gibbs in the number 17 Interstate Battery Chevrolet. Ricky Rudd is still at Hendrick Motorsports in the number 25 with longtime sponsor Gatorade. Neil Bonnet is driving a second car for Richard Childress, and thanks to a resurgence in 1992, he will run the full schedule in 1993. The Petty 43 will return in 1993, with Rick Wilson driving the car except for a few races. Why? That is because Richard Petty, despite him being retired from full-time racing, will be making a few more appearances, mostly on the short tracks. This is what Petty's schedule looks like in terms of 1993. Of course, a lot of it involves the short tracks, but a major one is the Daytona Road Course. And lastly, Terry Labonte is in the number 44 for his family-owned team with Kellogg's on his car. Patty Moyes is back in the number 45 Barbie Pontiac for Sapco Racing, and a lot of eyes are on Sapco Racing right now, as they may soon look to be the best team in NASCAR, not to mention with defending champion Kyle Petty in the 42. Tim Richmond is still in the 51 Exxon Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports, and then you got Rich Vogler still racing in the Cup Series in the number 55 Jasper Ford. Bubba Nissen is going strong with his self-owned team in the number 59 Pontiac as he looks to clinch a championship. Ken Schrader continues to drive for Dunleavy in the number 90 Red Baron Ford. And of course, for a couple what-ifs, you know them well, what if Alan Kulwicki and Davey Allison were still alive and continued on their Cup careers like normal for 1993 and beyond? Taking a look back on the 1993 Busch Series season, we start off at Daytona, where on the final lap, Tom Peck got to the inside of Dale Earnhardt, giving him the opportunity to get the biggest win of his racing career. As you see them going down the back straightaway, Tom Peck with the advantage over Dale Earnhardt. Rick Mast is there to steal it as well. But as they go into turns 3 and 4, Tom Peck was able to secure the block on the 61 of Rick Mast. Mast had no chance at all to get him, and Tom Peck would go on to get his first career NASCAR Busch Series win. Peck with the huge win, and this would be his only win of 1993. At the 6th race of the season at Hickory, Shauna Robinson was leading with under 10 laps to go, but she ended up blowing her engine late in the race, ending her chances to win that night, and this handed the victory over to front row Joe Nemechek. Coming to the final lap at Charlotte, Jimmy Spencer and Jeff Burton were battling for the lead as Jimmy Spencer was able to complete the pass and hold off the youngest of the two Burton brothers to score the win at Charlotte, something that Jimmy Spencer has much needed. Race 11 at North Wilkesboro was the battle of the brothers between Jeff and Ward Burton. The two of them exchanged the lead back and forth as Jeff Burton had the lead with about 25 laps to go over his older brother. However, during that process, Ricky Craven snuck by Jeff Burton with 4 laps remaining in the race to score the victory at North Wilkesboro. Just a couple races later, Bobby Dotter looked like he was on his way to his first career NASCAR Busch Series victory. However, Jimmy Spencer was able to get around him coming to the white flag as Spencer completed the pass, came back around, and won at Indianapolis Raceway Park. At this point in the season, this marked Jimmy Spencer's 3rd win of the 1993 season. Similar situation almost in the 17th race of the season at Myrtle Beach as Tracy Leslie led with 2 laps to go, but he had to pit as he was running out of gas, handing the lead to Hermie Sadler, and that is who would go on to win at Myrtle Beach. Hermie Sadler earned his first career Busch Series win that evening. It was a quiet season for Grant Adcox, but he was able to grab the win at New Hampshire after passing Clifford Allison in the final 2 laps of the race. This would mark the 1990 Busch Series champions' only win in 1993. There was some drama in the 24th race of the season at Darlington when, during the final restart, in which it was a 1-lap dash to the finish, first and second place Dick Trickle and Grant Adcox ran out of fuel under the pace laps, and because of that, Clifford Allison took the lead and ran away with it as he managed to lead the most important of all the laps in the race, the final one, as he went on to win at Darlington. But the biggest moment of the Busch Series season came in the season finale at Atlanta. Dick Trickle did go on to win the race, but history was made, and we have witnessed something that I don't think many would ever see. Because all eyes ended up on Shauna Robinson, who has been mentored by Patty Moyes, and she became the first ever female champion in NASCAR history. Shauna Robinson is the 1993 NASCAR Busch Series champion. You thought Patty Moyes made some noise? Well, this one would end up making major headlines in the sports world, and this impressed many fans and even drivers in the garage area. Dale Earnhardt made a comment afterwards saying, quote, "I'm happy to see a female champion in the sport. I think it's great to see people like Patty and Shauna succeed in NASCAR, and I hope this inspires future drivers and fans too." And then he left with this. He said, "I know one thing. I got a daughter who can race hard, so be on the lookout for that." And then he gave him a wink and walked away. I wonder what Dale Earnhardt's talking about. And then, of course, Felix Sabates, the owner of Sabco Racing, said, quote, "I'm so proud of this team. With Kyle winning the Cup title last year, Patty's been doing great, and you're going to see how she does here coming up. And now, Shauna's a champion. We're building something really special here at Sabco Racing." It seems official at this point. We seem to have a female movement going on in NASCAR. What could this mean as we go further down the road? Well, you're going to find out in this video, and of course, as the timeline progresses. And here's a look at the final top 10 in standings for the 1993 NASCAR Busch Series season. And once again, a huge congratulations to Shauna Robinson. But for now, let's head over to the NASCAR Winston Cup for 1993. Here is the first lap of the 1993 Daytona 500 as Dale Earnhardt and Eddie Bierschwell led the field of 42 cars to the green flag. As the leaders came back around, Eddie Bierschwell would lead lap 1. The big one would strike on lap 11 when Kyle Petty got loose going into turn 3 and came back up into Bubba Nissen, collecting Jeff Gordon, Chad Little, and here comes the pileup as turns 3 and 4 became a parking lot for a moment. Dale Earnhardt, Bubba Nissen, and Terry Labonte were out of the race after this wreck. The race restarted on lap 16 with Darrell Waltrip leading, Rick Wilson second, Davey Allison third, Neil Bonnet fourth, and Rob Moroso in fifth. Waltrip's lead didn't last long, however, as Rick Wilson would take the lead going into turn 1 with a push from Davey Allison. Then as they came back around, Davey Allison took the lead from Wilson with a push from Neil Bonnet. Then on lap 19, Wally Dallenbach Jr. of Roush Racing took the lead and would lead for the next several laps. Coming to lap 27, Neil Bonnet and Davey Allison get by Wally Dallenbach after he got held up by the lap car of Chad Little. Davey Allison would take the lead for a little bit as he is searching for his first win since scoring the 1991 championship, but Neil Bonnet would take the lead shortly after. With that being said, it continued to be lead change after lead change after lead change, as there was still a good pack of 16 cars competing for the win. This included a notable face in this year's Daytona 500, Al Unser Jr., open-wheel superstar, as he took the lead on lap 35. By lap 40, the field got split by lap traffic again, as Joe Nemechek led Lake Speed, Al Unser Jr., and Jimmy Hensley. With 20 laps to go, Joe Nemechek led the field as the leaders began their final round of green flag pit stops. Dale Jarrett's car lost a lot of speed to damage from the earlier wreck, and the field split up again, to where 5 cars led by Michael Waltrip were battling for the win. In the closing laps, it became pure insanity. The lead changed lap after lap, and who was in contention changed lap after lap. It was a major swarm of leaders and lap traffic, as with 2 laps to go, Rusty Wallace got out of the mess first, but he had no drafting help, and it showed, as Joe Nemechek was charging fast towards Rusty Wallace. And just like that, Joe Nemechek took the lead as they were coming to the white flag. Nemechek, Wally Dallenbach Jr., and Rich Vogler were all in contention to win the Great American Race. Dallenbach got to second and tried to run down Nemechek, but it was no success, as the rookie Joe Nemechek would win the 1993 Daytona 500 for Hendrick Motorsports, earning his first career NASCAR Winston Cup Series victory. And what a huge moment, as many fans felt that he wasn't ready for the jump up. But he certainly proved the doubters wrong today. Wally Dallenbach Jr. finished second, Rich Vogler was third, Michael Waltrip fourth, Patty Moyes at fifth, Ricky Rudd sixth, Rusty Wallace seventh, Jimmy Hensley eighth, Davey Allison ninth, and Mark Thompson rounded out the top 10. In the 4th race of the season at Atlanta, during the first cycle of green flag pit stops, Patty Moyes, who was leading the points early on, got into Neil Bonnet as she was trying to come down the pit, and they both end up wrecking right into Darrell Waltrip. This would be the only caution of the race, as Bill Elliott held off a charging Alan Kowicki in the closing laps to win at Atlanta. A couple races later, at Bristol late in the race, a caution came out for a wild wreck as Lake Speed went 3 wide into turn 1, getting into Sterling Marlin and Bill Elliott as both of them go wall riding, as Marlin had the worst of it as he rolled down the steep banking. Marlin was okay after the crash, while Neil Bonnet went on to win at Bristol. On the final lap in race 9 at Texas World, Rob Moroso was looking like the car to beat as he took the lead from Rusty Wallace coming to the white flag. But coming off turn 4, Mark Martin came charging and was able to beat Moroso at the line to score his first win of 1993. Much needed from Martin as he had a struggling start to the 1993 season. The 1993 All-Star Race took place at Nashville, as Winston Cup drivers eligible to compete are winners from 1992 and 1993, as well as past champions. So, this would allow for Richard Petty to compete, since he also made a couple starts already this season, as well as the top 4 from the Open to advance. During the Open, Derek Cope took the lead and went out to a 7-second lead to win the Open and advance, as well as Ken Schrader, Jeff Gordon, and Michael Waltrip. The race was split into 3 segments over 100 laps, 40 laps for the first 2 segments, and the 20-lap dash to win the grand prize and bragging rights. It was a heck of a party put together at Nashville, and it was a jam-packed, sold-out crowd at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway as 28 cars raced on for 100 laps as Rusty Wallace and Patty Moyes led the field to the green flag to start the 1993 All-Star Race. Darrell Waltrip led early on, but Lake Speed went on to lead for a large chunk of the race. Terry Labonte would then take the lead on lap 63, with Speed and now Rob Moroso still in the picture. However, in the closing stages of the All-Star race, Mark Thompson creeped into the picture and took the lead from Terry Labonte. Reminder, he had an upset win at Michigan in 1992 that allowed him to be in this race. Thompson took the lead, and from there on out, Mark Thompson went on to prove that his Michigan win was not a fluke, as he will go on to win the 1993 NASCAR All-Star Race. Wow, what an upset. Definitely one of the biggest upsets in All-Star Race history, if not in recent memory of NASCAR in general. Despite where his career takes him next, Mark Thompson will be racing in the All-Star Race much more often from here on out. One driver to talk about for 1993 has got to be Patty Moyes. She really proved herself in 1993. She won 3 races, earned 9 top 5s and 17 top 10s and a pole award. She ended up finishing 4th in the points and was a huge surprise to many. Patty Moyes is definitely proving that she's the real deal, and she's going to be here for a while. Patty Moyes is starting to become a championship contender in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. In the newly named Pepsi 400K at the Daytona Road Course, Jeff Gordon was looking to pick up his first career win, but after a final round of green flag pit stops, Tim Richmond had stayed out an extra lap that ended up benefiting him in the end, giving him the lead, and then Jeff Gordon got held up by lap traffic and got passed by Ricky Rudd for second. With that being said, the Hendrick duo of Richmond and Rudd went on to finish 1-2, as Tim Richmond went on to win at the road course at Daytona. In the second Michigan race of the season, another driver joined Joe Nemechek in getting their first Cup Series win, and that was Bobby Labonte driving for Robert Yates Racing, holding off Ted Musgrave to win the race. Ironically, all 4 rookies this season ended up finishing in the top 5 in this race. It ended up being an exciting battle in the Bristol night race for the win, as Rob Moroso, Patty Moyes, Eddie Bierschwell, and Joe Nemechek were all fighting for the lead and fighting lap traffic as well. With 19 laps to go, Joe Nemechek took the lead and cleared all the traffic, with Rob Moroso sliding into second. Moroso tried his best to chase down Nemechek but ran out of time, as Joe Nemechek would go on to earn his second career Cup Series win at Bristol. Nemechek had a very impressive rookie season. In the final parts of the race of the second Dover race, it was an RCR 1-2 battle between Neil Bonnet and Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt had a fast car, but was unable to get around Bonnet. Not only that, but Earnhardt ended up pitting with 3 laps to go, and that sealed the fate. And this allowed for Neil Bonnet to go on and win at Dover. With 23 laps to go at the second Texas World Race, Morgan Shepherd, who was second, was trying to get around the lap car of Sterling Marlin, where he sent his number 21 Ford into turn 3 way too hard, hitting Marlin and taking out Jeff Gordon, who was in contention for his first win. Both Marlin and Gordon took big hits, while Sterling Marlin barreled down the banking, but that wasn't the end as he gets clipped by Bill Elliott, collecting a couple others in the wreck. This wreck did sideline Sterling Marlin with injuries, as he would sit out for the last 2 races of 1993 and prep for 1994. Ricky Craven would be the substitute driver for Phoenix and Atlanta. However, after the race, Jeff Gordon and Sterling Marlin's team were furious with Morgan Shepherd afterwards. And at the season finale at Atlanta, it was another exciting championship battle as 5 drivers were mathematically eligible, but it was mainly down to Ricky Rudd and Bubba Nissen, as Nissen came into the final race just 7 points ahead of Ricky Rudd. Ricky Rudd had a strong car throughout the race, but Bubba Nissen was close enough to where he could secure the championship. However, heartbreak struck late in the race for Bubba Nissen. In the closing 15 laps of the race, Nissen's engine went up in smoke, ending his championship hopes. His day was done, and with that being said, while Neil Bonnet was able to get around Ricky Rudd in the final laps of the race and win at Atlanta, it was Ricky Rudd, driving for Hendrick Motorsports, finally earning his first NASCAR Winston Cup championship, as he is your champion for 1993. Ricky Rudd, with sponsor Gatorade, gets the job done, and a huge heartbreak for Bubba Nissen, as he could have pulled off one of the biggest Cinderella stories in NASCAR history. But this one goes to one of the big powerhouses in Hendrick Motorsports, as Ricky Rudd clinches the 1993 Winston Cup Series championship. And then as for the IROC Series, Kyle Petty added on to his successful resume as of late, as he went on to score the 1993 IROC Championship over Davy Jones and Lake Speed. Here are your winners from the IROC season, as well as the final standings. And here's a list of your winners from the 1993 NASCAR Busch Series season. And here's the list of winners from the 1993 NASCAR Winston Cup Series season. Moving on now to the 1994 season, and we'll cover silly season and the schedule changes. To start things off, let's talk about the schedule changes. So the biggest one is the return of Talladega. However, it looks a little different. So with Talladega, NASCAR decided to give Talladega a new look, but also give the track a lot of character by reconfiguring it into a 1.66 mile speedway that will create a unique style of racing while still improving safety for the drivers. Just as a quick note, the track is still being worked on with the visuals, and the final product will be done soon. Also, a huge thanks to Rose Jam Princess for all of their work on this track. Be sure to stay tuned for the final product. With that being said, Talladega takes its fall date back and will also host the 1994 All-Star Race. The other major schedule change is, of course, the much anticipated debut of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, as it will set to host the inaugural Brickyard 400 this season. Moving on now to silly season, here's what we got in the Busch Series. Casey Elliott will run the full season for Bill Elliott in the number 94 Bosch Tools Ford. Of course, he is a major what-if in this timeline. Bobby Hamilton was given a good deal from Sabco Racing to move down to the Busch Series and drive a second car for them, being teammates to the defending Busch Series champion, Shauna Robinson. With the recent explosion of female superstars in the sport, this has also created a big influence for female race car drivers to get more into NASCAR. Remember when Dale Earnhardt hinted that he has a daughter that can race pretty good? Well, he decided to work out a plan to have his daughter Kelly Earnhardt run a select number of Busch Series races for the summer of 1994 and 1995. This is so she can finish up her college work. Then, by 1996, the plan is for Kelly to run a full-time Busch Series schedule. Meanwhile, Roush Racing has also signed on a female driver in Tammy Jo Kirk, a young driver running late models. She will run a partial schedule in the number 60 Winn-Dixie Ford. She will share the ride with Wally Dallenbach Jr. and another driver that I will name when we get to the Cup portion. You'll see why. Kat Teasdale decided to give the Busch Series a shot, running a few races as well for her own team. And lastly, Marty Burke will work towards running a full season, but if there is a lack of funding, J.D. McDuffie or Jeff McDuffie may run the car for a couple of races as well. And another what-if driver, Rick Baldwin, will run for himself for a majority of the season as well. Moving over now to the Cup Series, Jeff Gordon returns for year 2 in the number 1 for Bill Davis Racing. Joe Nemechek returns to the number 5 Tide Machine for Hendrick Motorsports after an impressive rookie season. Alan Kowicki still drives the number 7 Hooters Ford for himself. Eddie Bierschwell is still with the Stavola brothers in the number 8 Robestos Ford. Bill Elliott has a new look for 1994 as he becomes a co-owner of Melling Racing, rebranding the team to Elliott Melling Racing. Davey Allison still drives the number 12 Mountain Dew Ford for his father's team, still trying to chase more wins. Mark Martin has a new look as he is back with Bud Moore in the number 15 Ford. Wally Dallenbach Jr. stays with Roush Racing after having a solid 1993 season with new sponsor Twix. Rob Moroso is still in the number 20 Haviland Chevrolet for his family team, with of course the alliance from Richard Childress. Defending champion Ricky Rudd is still in the 25 Gatorade Chevrolet for Rick Hendrick. Bobby Labonte returns to Robert Yates Racing in the number 28 Slim Jim Ford. Patty Moyes continues to impress in her number 45 Pontiac for Sabco Racing. Rich Vogler switches over to number 77. Lake Speed and Terry Schoonover are still with their team SS Motorsports. And for some changes, Ernie Irvin is out at Morgan McClure Motorsports and is replaced by Kenny Wallace, who has long awaited to make the move up to the Cup Series. For Ernie Irvin, he moves over to Junior Johnson's number 11 Budweiser Ford. So yes, after many years with the team, scoring the 1982 NASCAR Winston Cup Championship and the 1985 Daytona 500 with this team, Darrell Waltrip moves on from Junior Johnson. Where does he go? He moves over to Jack Roush's number 6 Valvoline Ford, replacing Dick Trickle. Trickle heads over to Larry Hedrick's number 41 team and will run the full season. TriStar's number 19 team will be rotated between Loy Allen Jr., Bobby Hillin Jr., and Ted Musgrave. Allen wants to run the full season but also needs sponsorship in order to do so. That of course because Hooters is still with Alan Kowicki. Hutch Strickland moves over to Travis Carter's team in the number 23 Smokin' Joe's Ford, and John Andretti will be driving the Petty 43 for most of the season, while Richard Petty drives a few races as well. This does include attempting the Brickyard 400. Andretti will run the full schedule, driving a second car for the King whenever Petty races the 43. Shauna Robinson will drive a handful of races for Sabco in the number 40 Kmart Pontiac as she is prepping for potentially moving up to the Winston Cup in 1995. Jeremy Mayfield will be contending for Rookie of the Year in the Sattler Bros number 95 Ford. Derek Cope is in the number 98 for Cale Yarborough. And lastly, Clifford Allison will drive some Cup races in 1994 for Bobby Allison as well. In the number 84 Diet Pepsi Ford, as Clifford is also looking to prep for a Rookie of the Year run in 1995. Now let's move on to some of the highlights that happened in 1994. In the final 5 laps of the season opener Daytona, Morgan Shepherd clawed his way from 13th all the way to the front on the final lap. And on the final lap, Shepherd was 3 wide with Bobby Hamilton and Chad Little battling for the win. No one gave up a single inch as they remained 3 wide down the backstretch and going into turn 3. Behind them was a small pileup as they went through turns 3 and 4 for the final time, then coming off turn 4 and heading to the checkers, it was Morgan Shepherd, the 1990 Daytona 500 winner, barely beating out Bobby Hamilton for the win to start the season. What an incredible finish! In the 10th race of the season at New Hampshire, Dale Earnhardt ran out of gas and had to pit with 3 laps to go. Unable to win the race, this gave the win over to the defending champion, Shauna Robinson. Kelly Earnhardt had a shot to win the race in Louisville as she was on Rick Mast's tail in the closing laps. Her winning would generate even more buzz of the female movement in the sport. However, Rick Mast held on for what would be his second win of the 1994 season. Kelly was feeling good about her run, but she knows she could have won that race. Which takes us to one race later. During the summer of 1994, many fans flocked out to races to see the daughter of 3-time Winston Cup champion Dale Earnhardt make her first starts in the Busch Series. She nearly pulled off a major upset at Louisville, but the next race this time, she finished it off as Kelly Earnhardt picked up her first NASCAR national victory in front of a sold-out crowd at Hickory Motor Speedway. Dale Earnhardt was smiling ear to ear after the race and said that she has a ton of fire in her and a lot of talent, and teases that he has 2 other kids working their way up now too. The 24th race of the season at Texas World provided one of the most exciting finishes of the season, as Ricky Craven was trying to hold off Joe Nemechek and David Green for the win. But coming off turn 4, Nemechek and Green both took their shot and made it almost 3 wide coming to the finish, but Craven got him and Ricky Craven went on to take the win at Texas World. In the first Busch Series race at the New Talladega, well, there were some kinks that still need to be worked out as there were quite a few wrecks. But as the dust settled, it was Casey Elliott earning his first career win at the brand new Talladega. Late in the season at Charlotte, Darrell Waltrip and Shauna Robinson put on a show, but after all that time, a late caution came out when Waltrip was trying to come back on the track after a scheduled green flag pit stop, and he got tagged and went for a spin, taking him out of contention and shuffling the field, leading to Hermie Sadler picking up the win. 1994, however, was dominated by one driver in particular, that man being Rick Mast, as he went on to collect the 1994 NASCAR Busch Series Championship, driving for B.R. DeWitt and Richie Evans. A much-needed moment in Mast's career. He's uncertain if he ever gets back to a full-time Cup ride, but he's currently enjoying the success that he has in the Busch Series. Now we move ahead with the 1994 Winston Cup Series season, and as always, we'll start off with Daytona in what ends up being a rather historic one. Here's the opening lap of the 1994 Daytona 500 as Brett Bodine leads him to the green flag. Ricky Rudd took the lead coming back around, and he would lead the first couple of laps until Harry Gant and Ken Schrader got by him. The lead would swap a lot as the race stayed clean through the first 19 laps as Ricky Rudd regained the lead. But Eddie Bierschwell would take the lead coming to lap 20. On lap 26, there was a bit of a surprise up front with Loy Allen Jr. leading the way, but was then passed by Morgan Shepherd. He was then passed by Patty Moyes for the lead a lap later. By lap 30, defending Daytona 500 winner Joe Nemechek took the lead, looking to win his second Daytona 500. Lap 34, we got the men in black. Dale Earnhardt leads as Tim Richmond is second. Two iconic paint schemes of the Cup Series, running 1-2. Over the course of the race, the lead kept changing nearly every lap. All 42 cars were still in one big pack until green flag pit stops took place on lap 44. After green flag pit stops cycled through, Bill Elliott took over the lead, but there were about 13 cars behind him and they ran him down pretty quickly. These were most likely the ones that had the best chances to win the Great American Race. Interesting names in this pack include Michael Waltrip, who has never won a Cup race, Loy Allen Jr., Shauna Robinson, Robert Presley, and Jim Sauter. Just about 20 laps to go, and we're 3 wide for the lead as Loy Allen Jr. takes the lead while Bill Elliott was hung out to dry on the outside. Going into turn 3 now, Shauna Robinson takes the lead as Robert Presley follows her. Could we have an upset winner today? Then just a few laps later, Joe Nemechek got around Shauna Robinson for the lead, and Davey Allison is trying to follow him with Neil Bonnet behind him. Then on lap 57, lap traffic split the field up as Moroso leads with Loy Allen Jr. in second and Michael Waltrip third. 10 laps to go as the field has reached another lapped car of John Andretti. Neil Bonnet jumps out to the lead, and this could split up the field even more. Now it's almost 3 wide. Nemechek takes the lead as Bill Elliott tried to make a move. Here we go, 5 laps left, and here comes Shauna Robinson. She takes the lead from Rob Moroso, though it might be too early. She's going to try and hold off everyone else as Loy Allen Jr. is up to second. Can Robinson hold on to make history? Here they come to the white flag. Shauna Robinson out in front, and she is on the verge of making major history. Here's Neil Bonnet. He moves to the inside of Loy Allen Jr. to take second away. Allen has ran great all race long, but it is still Shauna Robinson out in front. Coming off turn 2 and down the backstretch for the final time. Patty Moyes has led a movement that no one in the industry was expecting, and what her protege is about to do is only going to grow it even more. Here they come to the checkers. Shauna Robinson is going to win the Daytona 500. I can't believe it. The first female to ever win the Daytona 500, and I'm sure Felix Sabates is the happiest person on planet Earth right now. Wow. Here's a look at your top 10 as this stunned the whole world. There was a female movement going on, but this is surely going to cause a massive growth now at this point, pushing NASCAR to be more of a welcoming co-ed sport. As Robinson was congratulated in a jam-packed victory lane full of many spectators, photographers, crew members, and of course her teammates, Kyle Petty and Patty Moyes. This will surely go down as one of the most memorable Daytona 500s in recent history. It was an exciting battle in the very next race at Rockingham between Joe Nemechek, Rusty Wallace, and Tim Richmond. Wallace ended up making the pass for the lead with 12 laps to go, but then with 3 laps to go, Richmond challenged Wallace for the lead, knowing it was his last shot to get the win, and he makes it happen. But Rusty and a few other leaders had to pit late because they were not going to make it on fuel. However, Hendrick teammates Tim Richmond and Joe Nemechek had enough to hang on, and Tim Richmond went on to get the win at Rockingham. At the fourth race of the season at Atlanta, a wild wreck took place on lap 30 when Rob Moroso was trying to get down on pit road and got into Harry Gant, triggering a massive pileup, collecting Dale Jarrett, Tim Richmond, Jeff Bodine, Lake Speed, and then others like John Andretti, Jeff Burton, Mark Thompson, Curtis Markham, and Rick Corelli. Andretti and Burton went for wild rides, but thankfully both drivers were okay. Absolute chaos at Atlanta. At the 8th race at Martinsville on lap 9, Rich Vogler was going a lap down to the leaders as he nearly put second place Ricky Rudd into the wall. Then as things went 3 wide coming off turn 4, Jimmy Hensley gets turned by Dale Earnhardt and Vogler right into the wall, blocking Rudd's way and also collecting a couple of cars. One race later at Sonoma, it marked the very first career Cup Series win for an up-and-coming superstar. He's been named as racing's next greatest thing, and last season he was impressive, but now he's finally going to get something he's really needed, and that is his first career Winston Cup Series win. Jeff Gordon, the California kid, is going to win at Sears Point. Jeff Gordon would go on to earn this win, but it would be his only win in 1994. As a matter of fact, the very next race of the Coca-Cola 600, Jeff Gordon was coming close to getting his second career win, but Patty Moyes passed Jeff Gordon with 9 laps to go to take the lead. On the final lap, Gordon was challenging Moyes for the lead, but he was not able to get around her as Patty Moyes went on to win the Coca-Cola 600. 2 crown jewels so far, both won by female drivers. Race 15 at New Hampshire, and trouble on lap 62 as Ernie Irvin gets hooked by Labonte and slams into the wall in turns 3 and 4, and Kenny Wallace is going for a spin, and a few others come sliding in. A very bizarre wreck at New Hampshire. Patty Moyes continued to prove why she belongs in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, as just 1 race later, she would earn her second win of the season at the Nashville Fairgrounds, earning herself a guitar in Victory Lane. One of the biggest highlights of the 1994 season was, of course, the inaugural NASCAR Winston Cup Series race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, known as the Brickyard 400. Well over 90 cars qualified for this race for only 42 spots. Many big names missed the field, such as Jeff Brabham, AJ Foyt, John Andretti, and Richard Petty were just a few of many to not make the race. Especially for Petty, he really wanted to make this race. 200,000 plus are here today to witness history. 42 of the best drivers in the world are ready to take on the Brickyard for the very first time. Alan Kowicki and Kyle Petty lead them to the green flag. Here we go. We are racing at Indy. And coming back to the yard of bricks for the first time, Alan Kowicki will lead the first ever lap of NASCAR at the Brickyard. However, just a couple laps later, Kyle Petty is there to challenge as Clifford Allison, who's running a partial schedule, sits in third. Then Petty takes the lead. Trouble on lap 4 as Rodney Orr gets turned by Eddie Bierschwell as he spins back up the track and hits the wall. Orr doesn't seem to have much damage and he keeps going. This was the first caution of the race. The race would then restart on lap 9. Then on lap 29, trouble in the back as Terry Schoonover gets into Ernie Irvan and Jimmy Hensley coming off turn 1 as Mike Skinner slams into Hensley and the caution is out for the second time of the afternoon. Lap 34, Patty Moyes continues to lead the Brickyard 400 as she's already won a big race this year with the Coca-Cola 600. She has Rob Moroso and Kyle Petty behind her, as well as Wally Dallenbach Jr. back there in fourth and searching for his first career Cup Series win. Then a lap later, here comes Rob Moroso to the inside as he has a chance here and he will take the lead coming off turn 4 as we are at almost 20 laps to go in the race. Then a lap 39, battle for the lead as Ricky Rudd looks to the inside of Moroso as they head into turn 1. The defending champion has a lot of momentum and he will complete the pass for the lead. However, in the closing laps, Ricky Rudd had some competition in the form of Wally Dallenbach. Driving for Roush Racing, he would eventually take the lead within the final handful of laps. And then the white flag came out for Dallenbach, looking for his first career Winston Cup Series win, and he has to hold off the defending champion Ricky Rudd. This is going to be an emotional one if he can hold on. And off of turn 4, it's going to be Roush Racing's Wally Dallenbach Jr. winning the inaugural Brickyard 400 at Indianapolis. What a special place to get your first ever Cup Series victory, and it's been a long time coming for Wally Dallenbach. He has continued to improve in that number 16 Ford, and it has paid off. He has won one of the biggest races on the modern NASCAR schedule. Could this be the first of many to come for Dallenbach? A couple highlights from the last couple of races in the season. Neil Bonnet made a pass coming to the white flag on Patty Moyes, and that would lead him to score the victory over Moyes. And then the next race at Talladega was the first Cup race back at the new look Talladega. And in the end, in what was a wild race, Davey Allison gets a home track win at the new Talladega. But at the end of the season, it was a driver taking home his second NASCAR Winston Cup championship. He scored his first in 1988, and he's going to score his second one in 1994. St. Louis, Missouri's Rusty Wallace, driving for Roger Penske, takes home the 1994 NASCAR Winston Cup Series Championship. Huge congratulations to him, and what a huge boost of momentum for Penske Racing. and I'll go ahead and show you the final Cup standings as well as the list of winners from 1994. And lastly, for the 1994 International Race of Champions, Scott Sharp from CART ended up taking home the championship. So one quick thing before we get into 1995. As you know, the Craftsman Truck Series debuted in real life in 1995. Well, it's not going to here, but I will explain why at the end of this video when I talk about 1996 and beyond. So please stay tuned for that, and I'll discuss more then. And now we've reached 1995. Let's go ahead and look over silly season for both Busch and Cup Series. Starting with the Busch Series, Robert Presley is still in the Busch Series, driving for Philmar Racing. He will drive some part-time Cup Series races as well. Mike Walsh and Jimmy Spencer are teammates at Sam Mard's team, and with Shauna Robinson going to the Cup Series, she, Patty Moyes, and Kyle Petty will split this number 45 car for the 95 season. Jeremy Mayfield elects to go down to the Busch Series and drive full-time for American Equipment Racing in the number 95. With Elton Sawyer in the number 38, Kelly Earnhardt agrees to switch her number to 83 as she runs another summer of part-time Busch Series races. She will run full-time in 1996 when she graduates college. Tammy Jo Kirk now runs full-time for Roush Racing in the number 60 Winn-Dixie Ford, and Casey Elliott continues to drive the number 94 for Bill Elliott. No other major changes besides that. And the biggest changes in the Cup Series, Sterling Marlin sticks with Junior Johnson with new sponsorship from Lowe's, as Ernie Irvin is still in the number 11 Budweiser Ford. Ward Burton moves up to the Cup Series as he replaces Hutch Strickland in the number 23 for Travis Carter's team. Meanwhile, his brother Jeff Burton takes over Leo Jackson's number 33, replacing a retired Harry Gant. Ricky Craven also moves up to the Cup Series as he was signed on by Michael Kranefuss's new team, and they get a new sponsor in DuPont, since Kmart is with another team. That being our next driver we're talking about. Shauna Robinson, the 1994 Daytona 500 champion, will go full-time in 1995 with Sabco Racing as she will carry Little Caesars and Kmart on her number 40 Pontiac. Mellow Yellow stays with Kyle Petty and continues their successful partnership, while Patty Moyes is also still in the number 45 Barbie Pontiac for Sabco Racing. Michael Waltrip moves on from Bahari Racing after struggling for the last couple of seasons, and he replaces Rich Vogler in the number 77 for Jasper Racing. As for Waltrip's old ride, John Andretti takes over the number 30 Pennzoil Pontiac. Over at SS Motorsports, Terry Schoonover has a new sponsor in Spam as he continues to drive for the team he owns with Lake Speed. As I mentioned before, Clifford Allison will start running full-time in the Winston Cup Series. He is now driving a second car for Bobby Allison, sponsored by Diet Pepsi. Rich Vogler will drive the number 98 Ford for Cale Yarbrough. Derek Cope moves over to drive the 43 for Richard Petty, and just like last season, he will drive that second car when Richard Petty is driving his handful of races. Rodney Orr will also drive part-time for the Sadler brothers. The biggest change for the schedule in 1995 is the new Louisiana Motor Speedway, as it joins the schedule in the early portion of the season, replacing North Wilkesboro Spring Day. This was a track that was teased in the last Sunday Night Lights video, and a special thanks to Rose Jam Princess for helping out with this track, and Jets Racing Designs for helping design the logo as well. North Wilkesboro still has its fall dates for 1995 and beyond. And also, I will note that Texas World Speedway will host the 1995 All-Star Race. Now let's move over to the highlights for the Busch Series season for 1995. We start off with the season opener at Daytona as Marty Burke won his first ever pole as he led the field to begin the 1995 Busch Series season. The only caution of the race came out on lap 32 when Tammy Jo Kirk lost control in turn 3 and went back up into Tim Futua. But in the end, we did have an upset winner. It was 45-year-old Rodney Combs from Cincinnati, Ohio, picking up the biggest win of his racing career at Daytona. What a huge moment for Rodney Combs, and a big congratulations to him. This would be Combs' only win of 1995. At the third race at Richmond, Tim Futua wrecks Casey Elliott from the lead on lap 68. Patty Moyes, meanwhile, went on to win the race, but an insane moment here as Futua took out Casey Elliott. Drama unfolded in the closing laps of the inaugural Busch Series race at Louisiana Motor Speedway as Robert Presley restarted in the lead with nearly 10 laps to go. Things looked well until his car broke down on the backstretch during the restart, running into Rick Baldwin and spinning to bring the caution back out. Under yellow the next lap, Terry Labonte had a run-in with Casey Elliott as they both made a bit of contact with one another, causing Elliott to spin. Elliott was able to keep his position since it was under caution and would finish second to Tim Futua, earning his second career win and his second win in 3 races. I will note that Tim Futua did also win the Darlington Spring race. Futua would go on to pick up one more win late in the season with a total of 3 wins in 1995. Race 10 at Nazareth, we witnessed another new female winner as Tammy Jo Kirk, driving for Roush Racing, went on to earn her first career Busch Series win at Nazareth Speedway. Race number 21 at Road America featured a thriller as Todd Bodine made a late move on Bobby Hamilton as the two of them battled it out. Bodine went on to win at Road America. Todd Bodine hopes that a big win like this could help him elevate towards running in the Cup Series. Race number 29 at Talladega with 6 laps left in the race. Elton Sawyer was running up front trying to secure a second win in 1995, but he was dumped by Dale Jarrett as they were racing for 4th place. Elton Sawyer was not happy with Dale Jarrett afterwards. And not to mention that Dale Jarrett has been having it rough lately, but we'll discuss more of that in a moment. Mark Martin, driving for Bud Moore, went on to win this race. Heading into the final race at the new Homestead Miami Speedway, David Green held a 56-point lead over Casey Elliott, who had no wins. Bobby Hamilton was back by 81 points, and Jeff Green, driving for Dale Earnhardt, was backed by 87. So, the championship was still up for grabs for these 4 drivers. As a matter of fact, we're going to go a little bit in depth with the end of this race because this championship battle got crazy. Let's fast forward now to 7 laps to go as David Green was on his way to locking up the Busch Series championship. However, disaster struck with 7 laps to go. David Green gets into Marty Burke, sending them both into the wall. David Green does keep going, but he lost all that track position, and now he's got a lot of damage on his car as he was running around 12th. As for Marty Burke, his day was done, but this was very tough for David Green. After that, Bobby Hamilton was 8th, Jeff Green was 9th, and Casey Elliott had worked his way to 12th after starting the race dead last. He had worked the hardest of the 4 championship contenders. Thanks to that incident, David Green was sent back to 30th. Rick Mast, last year's champion who had entered the race 5th in points and 107 points out, restarted with the lead with 3 laps remaining. With 2 laps to go, Joe Nemechek worked the outside line well, and he got around Rick Mast for the lead thanks to a little assistance from Mark Martin. And with that, Joe Nemechek would go on to win at Homestead, Miami over Mark Martin and Tracy Leslie. Rick Mast ended up finishing 4th, Bobby Hamilton was 7th, Jeff Green was 9th, Casey Elliott was 13th, and David Green finished a heartbreaking 32nd. And with that, the final standings was the closest for the championship in Busch Series history, if not possibly in modern NASCAR's history. The 1995 NASCAR Busch Series champion, who scored no wins, but managed to win it by just 1 point, Casey Elliott. Casey Elliott managed to beat out David Green by 1 point, and Bobby Hamilton by 3 points, Rick Mast by 10, and Jeff Green by 18. What a historic battle, and this is going to be remembered, I'm sure, for many years to come. Just imagine that David Green could still have won the championship if he had just held on for 1 more position, but unfortunately, he lost it out, and Casey Elliott took home the championship. Not only that, but as I mentioned, Casey Elliott pulled it off without winning a single race. He won 1 race in 1994 at Talladega, and this season he scored 8 top 5s and 12 top 10s. It was certainly a special moment for both Casey and his uncle, Bill Elliott, who scored the Cup Series championship just a decade earlier. Bill Elliott said after the race, quote, "I am so damn proud of Casey. He fought so hard for this, and it wasn't easy. We're going to be celebrating all the way back to Dawsonville, and I surely don't blame him." Casey Elliott, the 1995 NASCAR Busch Series champion. So now let's move on to the 1995 NASCAR Winston Cup Series, and we're going to start with the Clash this time. As coming to the white flag, Ricky Rudd took the lead from Rob Moroso, but he had a charging Joe Nemechek on his tail. With that, Joe Nemechek made the move and managed to get around his teammate and go on to win the 1995 Busch Clash just a couple years after winning the Daytona 500. Speaking of which, we move on now to the 1995 Daytona 500. Bubba Nissen and defending Daytona 500 winner Shauna Robinson led the field to the green flag for the 37th running of the Daytona 500. Enjoy the first lap. Bubba Nissen edged out Alan Kulwicki for the lead to lead the first lap as the 2 best owner drivers in the field lead the way. But that was until Rob Moroso made a 3-wide going into turn 3 to take the lead and would take over on lap 2. 10 laps in, one of the rookies made their way to the front, that being Ricky Craven, trying to impress the field early and do exactly what Joe Nemechek did just a couple years ago. Then 1 lap later, some new faces, Rodney Orr, took the lead with Gary Bradbury pushing him. Lap 13, Sterling Marlin then took the lead as he had a strong car for today's race. He was definitely a threat to win the Daytona 500. Lap 21, it is 3 wide between Ricky Craven, Ernie Irvan, and Wally Dallenbach. Everyone is giving it their all in this year's race. Another rookie took the lead on lap 25, that being Clifford Allison, taking the lead from Jeff Gordon. Lap 30, here comes Patty Moyes trying to become the second female to win the 500 with Ben Hess only running this race as a one-off in second. Shauna Robinson also had a strong car as she took the lead on lap 39, but right after that began a round of green flag pit stops. The race ended up being a clean one, as with 20 laps to go, Robinson led as 7 cars were in contention to win the Daytona 500. Then with 2 laps to go, Shauna Robinson took the lead from Terry Labonte, but she's got Dale Earnhardt right behind her. And then going into turn 3, Earnhardt went side by side with Shauna. Here we go, final lap of the Daytona 500. Earnhardt and Robinson remain side by side as right now none of them are giving up a single inch. Earnhardt trying to win his 3rd Daytona 500, Robinson trying to win it back to back. Down the backstretch now, Robinson's trying to get a run. Can she slam the door on Earnhardt? No, she's not able to. Earnhardt's going to scoot by and clear Robinson. Coming off turn 4 into the checkers, Dale Earnhardt, who won it in 84 and 88, he's going to win his 3rd Daytona 500 in 1995. Dale Earnhardt gets it done once again at Daytona. Always a dominant threat here at Daytona, but a huge, huge tip of the hat to Shauna Robinson. She's proven that she belongs here in the Cup Series, almost winning another Daytona 500, and an exciting start to the 1995 Cup Series season. That next week at Rockingham, Shauna Robinson won the pole and ended up leading for a lot of laps with an impressive run. But thanks to some yellows, she was shuffled back to 17th. Meanwhile, Davey Allison picked up an early win on the season as he's finally starting to come into his own and pick up more wins. At the inaugural Cup race at Louisiana, and for a lot of it, it was a battle between Rusty Wallace and Rob Moroso. With 3 laps to go, Moroso was leading when lap traffic ahead of him caused a wreck to bring out a caution. This was bad news for Moroso. This slowed him down and caused second place Tim Richmond to catch up, but luckily Moroso was just able to edge out Richmond back to the caution, and the race would end under yellow, letting Rob Moroso become the inaugural Cup Series winner at Louisiana Motor Speedway. Now, for Dale Jarrett, I brought him up earlier. You see, Dale Jarrett wasn't clicking at Joe Gibbs Racing since the team formed in 1992. Dale Jarrett was given one last chance in 1995, but things quickly went downhill. In the first 12 races, Jarrett only made 4 races, and this triggered a huge alarm in the Joe Gibbs Racing shop. Interstate Batteries was not pleased and told Gibbs they did not want to continue with Jarrett. Following the race at Pocono, Joe Gibbs Racing and Dale Jarrett parted ways. Dale Jarrett continued to run for his own operation in the Busch Series as he assesses what to do next and in the future of his career. Meanwhile, that Tuesday after Pocono, and after several phone calls, a joint press conference was made that involved Joe Gibbs, his son J.D. Gibbs, and Terry Labonte. The announcement was made that Terry Labonte was going to merge his team into Joe Gibbs Racing. Terry Labonte will take over the number 17 ride, with Interstate and Kellogg sponsoring the ride, while the number 44 team ends up shutting down. For now, anyway. Part of the deal also gives Labonte a partial stake in the team while maintaining control of his Busch Series team, which could help in the future development of Joe Gibbs Racing. Not only that, but you may recall earlier in this timeline, Terry Labonte drove the number 17 when he was at Hendrick Motorsports and won the 1987 championship. Now he's back with the same number, but under Coach Gibbs. Gibbs now has a driver with 2 championships, many wins, a ton of experience, and Kellogg's Cornflakes. Now the question remains, will this save Joe Gibbs Racing? Only time will tell. Moving on to race 13 at Michigan, it was a first career win alert for Greg Sachs as he would hold off the field on the final restart with 2 laps to go and collect the win at Michigan. Meanwhile, Terry Labonte would also go on to finish 5th and in a good start to his new endeavor with Joe Gibbs. The next race with the Pepsi 400K at Daytona, and in the closing laps of the race, Ernie Irvan was doing all he could to hold off a powerful Pontiac in Kyle Petty. Irvan was searching for his first win since 1992 at Riverside and his second career win. However, with 2 laps to go, heartbreak struck. Irvan and Petty remain side by side as they come to 2 laps to go. Ernie Irvan trying to hold on as they go back into the infield of Daytona International Speedway. Oh no! Irvan gets loose! He loses the lead! Oh, what a tough break for Ernie Irvan! Kyle Petty has pulled away, and an absolute heartbreak for Ernie Irvan. He needed this win. It was definitely heartbreaking for Irvan as Kyle Petty would go on to score what would be his second win of the 1995 season. Then the next race at New Hampshire on lap 28, Terry Labonte with his new team gets hooked by Ken Schrader, sending him into the turn 3 wall and caused a pileup. Thankfully though, Terry was okay after this vicious wreck. At the end of the race, many leaders had to pit for fuel, and the caution came out for Bubba Nissen hitting the wall. And with that, Ken Schrader was scored the leader, and he would pick up his first win since 1991 at Dover. It's been a while, but Schrader returns to victory lane. In the second running of the Brickyard 400, and for the second year in a row, Indianapolis featured a first career win alert. This time being Kenny Wallace, as he passed Kyle Petty with 4 laps to go and would go on to score his first career Cup Series win at the Brickyard. Despite the success his older brother is having, it's a good feeling for Kenny Wallace to score such a major victory at a place like Indianapolis. Late in the season at Rockingham with 6 laps to go, Brett Bodine was slow on the track and came back up into Davey Allison, taking him and his brother Clifford with him. And I'm sure Bobby Allison was not too pleased with Brett Bodine after that one. Meanwhile, Darrell Waltrip went on to win the race in the number 6 Roush Racing Ford. Alan Kulwicki had a dominating performance at Riverside, but on the final lap, Mark Martin made the move around Alan Kulwicki, and Mark Martin would go on to get the win at Riverside. One thing to note is that Terry Schoonover and Eddie Bierschwell both had some sparks going for them in 1995. Schoonover ended up winning 3 races, the biggest one including the Coca-Cola 600. Schoonover called it the biggest moment of his racing career and looks back on the opportunities he's had, including working alongside Lake Speed, in which he now co-owns SS Motorsports with. Eddie Bierschwell won at North Wilkesboro and Talladega, earning his 3rd and 4th career wins. Going into the final race at Atlanta, Rusty Wallace only held a 16-point lead over Rob Moroso, and Alan Kulwicki would need quite a bit to happen as he was 100 points back from Wallace. Patty Moyes would lead the field alongside Alan Kulwicki, while Rusty Wallace started 12th and Rob Moroso was back in 27th. And here we go for the final time in 1995. Green flag, we're underway at Atlanta. Rusty Wallace was looking like he had the best car all race long as he quickly worked his way up the field. Wallace wanted to grab his 3rd championship, while Moroso and Kulwicki, in which both drivers would be a huge story if they won it, were looking for their 1st. For Moroso, a championship from him would put him at the top as part of the future of the sport. For Kulwicki and his small team, it would be a huge upset, and he would one-up fellow owner driver Bubba Nissen as well. However, on lap 32, one of the contenders' hopes went up in smoke. That driver was unfortunately Alan Kulwicki. And here we go, several leaders are trying to pit here, and 2 cars get together, Rudd and Dallenbach. Oh, Kulwicki with nowhere to go! He gets clipped by Clifford Allison! Severe damage to that Hooters Ford, and his day is over, as well as any chance at the championship. Several cars were in that wreck, including Clifford Allison getting some airtime from a shove from Casey Elliott, who was making his 3rd career start in the Cup Series and had just taken home the Busch Series championship. The race resumed on lap 36 with Bubba Nissen leading the field. Lake Speed, Ernie Irvan, Eddie Bierschwell, and Terry Schoonover rounded out the top 5. Just a few laps later, Ernie Irvan would take the lead. Then on lap 53, Irvin was challenged by Terry Schoonover, who was having a career year. Schoonover looks to the inside of Irvin as they head into turn 1. Schoonover has the advantage, and reminder, he won this race a year ago. As they head down the backstretch, Terry Schoonover takes the lead from Ernie Irvin. 9 laps later, Irvin took it back from Schoonover, but shortly after, another caution would come out for Sterling Marlin running too hard into turn 3 and turning Joe Nemechek into the turn 3 wall. Nemechek was able to continue, but he was not happy with Sterling Marlin. Schoonover would remain the leader for the next restart on lap 69. Then on lap 83, Rusty Wallace was looking to lock up the championship as he challenged Darrell Waltrip for the lead. He would take the lead as he would earn 5 more bonus points to his points lead. Rob Moroso, however, had a ton of work to do and would almost need a miracle as he was running 11th. Then on lap 92, Neil Bonnet, who hasn't won a race all year long, would take the lead from Rusty Wallace, hoping to end the year on a high note. After the final round of green flag pit stops, Rob Moroso's crew performed the pit stop they needed to have any chance at the championship as they cycled up to 4th place, while Rusty Wallace was 12th with just 15 laps to go. They took a gamble, only taking 2 tires. Dick Moroso, Rob's father and crew chief, just pretty much said the following: "This is it, Rob. Drive hard. Let's do this." But as the laps ticked away, Rusty Wallace was driving through the field like he was racing against golf carts. That's how fast his number 2 Ford was. And with 6 laps to go, Wallace got around Moroso for 8th place as Moroso struggled to get around anyone. Unfortunately, this gamble didn't pay off. Meanwhile, back up front with 4 laps to go, Neil Bonnet had some new competition in the form of Terry Schoonover. Schoonover would blast past Bonnet from the lead, and he never looked back. Here they come to the checkered flag. Just like a year ago, Terry Schoonover will pick up the win at Atlanta, but just like a year ago as well, all eyes are on Rusty Wallace as he is your NASCAR Winston Cup champion for 1995. Rusty Wallace would go on to win his 3rd championship and goes back-to-back as well. Roger Penske was beginning to establish his team as possibly the top team in the sport. If there were like 4 pillars in NASCAR after 1995, it would be Hendrick, Sabco, RCR with Moroso, and Penske. What is next in store for Penske, especially now that this team has a lot of momentum on their side and Rusty Wallace continues to stack up the trophies? The International Exhibition at the end of the season at Calder Park was still taking place during this time, and with 2 laps remaining in the Calder Park race, Ricky Rudd was able to chase down Alan Kulwicki, who had been leading a good majority of the race, and pass him to go on to win in the Land Down Under. And lastly, we'll cover the Winston, the 1995 All-Star race at Texas World. Starting off with the Open, Ben Hess, who ran in the Daytona 500, scored the surprise pole over Jeff Burton and Clifford Allison, and led the field to the 30-lap Winston Open to see who would advance to the Winston. Ben Hess went on the lead the first 5 laps of the Open until Kenny Wallace and Terry Labonte went 3 wide on Hess on lap 6. Kenny Wallace would then take the lead until a caution came out on lap 7 when Gary Bradbury went too high on Morgan Shepherd, causing a small pileup on the backstretch. The race then restarted on lap 10 with Kenny Wallace leading, Terry Labonte second, and Sterling Marlin third. Immediately the field went 3 wide, but Terry Labonte had the advantage, running the middle line to take the lead. But Kenny Wallace ended up taking it back just a couple laps later. With 11 laps to go, Lake Speed took the lead from Kenny Wallace, with Sterling Marlin behind him. But then on the next lap, Kenny Wallace took it back as Sterling Marlin took second away from Speed. Wallace was able to pull away and win the Open, advancing him to the All-Star race. Moving on now to the All-Star race, Kyle Petty scored the pole, with Dale Earnhardt starting alongside him as 24 drivers raced for the big cash prize in this 50-lap All-Star race. Kyle Petty took an early lead, but a scary crash took place on lap 2 in the back of the field. Oh, look out! Big crash! Alan Kulwicki hooked Wally Dallenbach into Tim Richmond. Both cars sliding on their roofs now. Thankfully, no one coming their way. Thank goodness. I'm hearing both drivers are okay. That was indeed scary. Richmond and Dallenbach were okay after taking a wild ride. Alan Kulwicki did see the wreck in his rearview mirror for a split second, and he quickly offered an apology to both Richmond and Dallenbach. Kulwicki said after the race that he drove it in too hard into turn 3, not thinking he'd get into the 16, but also felt bad. Some leaders went down pit road when some didn't, as Dale Earnhardt led the field back to the green flag on lap 7. Ricky Rudd then took the lead a lap later, but then Bubba Nissen and Neil Bonnet made things very interesting, going 3 wide, but Rudd was able to hang on. 15 laps in, and Neil Bonnet was now leading with Ricky Rudd second and Jeff Gordon in third. Getting to the end of the first segment, Bonnet was able to hold off a charging Ricky Rudd and Jeff Gordon to lead the way. Bonnet and a few others went on to pit, handing the lead to Jeff Gordon. Gordon led for most of the second segment and was challenged by Bubba Nissen coming to the end of the segment, but Jeff Gordon hung on. Gordon continued to lead as they began the final segment with just 12 laps to go. With 7 laps to go, Davey Allison challenged Bobby Labonte for second, but Labonte was able to hang on as his eyes were on Jeff Gordon. With 4 laps to go, several leaders who tried to make it on field couldn't and went down pit road, which sparked concern for Jeff Gordon. And unfortunately, Jeff Gordon had to pit, coming to 3 laps to go for fuel, handing the lead to Shauna Robinson. Robinson had a lot of pressure coming from Darrell Waltrip, who is a champion, who has won several races, as on the final lap, Waltrip got to the inside of Robinson as they went side by side down the backstretch. Waltrip had the advantage coming off turn 4, and Darrell Waltrip, for a second year in a row, held off Shauna Robinson in a photo finish to win the 1995 All-Star race at Texas World. Definitely a thriller in this one. And lastly, Kyle Petty went on to win the 1995 IROC Championship. Before we end things off, I want to leave you with a teaser of what's to come. So let's go back to April 1994, where NASCAR scheduled a major press conference. This in particular was a major announcement that regarded the future of NASCAR as we race towards the 21st century. We have seen many rising stars in the sport in recent years, like the California kid Jeff Gordon, Rob Moroso, who's become an exciting championship contender, as well as the sudden female movement with drivers like Patty Moyes and Shauna Robinson. In recent years, NASCAR has thought long and hard about what to do to help grow the sport to every corner of the United States, as well as push internationally. There has been more interest in NASCAR than ever before, and they know that they need to expand their developmental series to meet the demand, which is why NASCAR was excited to announce the not one, not two, but 3 brand new racing series that will wave the green flag in 1996. So without further ado, let's talk about them. First, I'm going to introduce what's probably the most obvious one, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. This will be a racing league like never before, with the best and baddest trucks in America competing on the racetracks of America. The trucks will serve mostly the western part of the United States and will race on bigger and intermediate tracks. The schedule in the Truck Series will also feature a few dirt tracks as well. Expect Chevy Silverados, Ford F-150s, and it has been announced that Dodge will be running in this series with their Ram truck. Next is the DuPont Super Sportsman Series. This will serve as a more grassroots-like series, as it will race primarily on short tracks in the eastern United States. Older Cup and Busch Series cars will be converted for the series with less powerful engines. What also plays to the advantage of the Super Sportsman Series is these cars will be more approachable for upcoming racers and will be a series that will embrace the pathway to the big leagues from grassroots racing. It'll be an exciting way to help develop future stars of NASCAR. And lastly, with the growing amount of road courses that NASCAR has had on their schedules, they announced a partnership with IMSA to create a series that will be a road course only schedule, as well as a series to help bring drivers from other racing circuits around the world and try stock car racing. I'd like to introduce to you the IMSA Stock GT Series. These cars, while having the feel of a stock car, have reworked technology to look and feel like a GT car. 1996 is going to be a big year for NASCAR, and there are many exciting changes coming, and many current teams are already showing interest in all new circuits that have been revealed. However, there is one more major announcement that also regards 1996. In particular, how the All-Star race will be ran that year. Why am I bringing this up? Well, when we get to the summer of 1996, Atlanta, Georgia will be hosting a major international sporting event. Of course, that being the Summer Olympics. NASCAR was pleased to announce that in July 1996, in a partnership with the International Olympic Committee, there will be an international all-star race during the Olympics. It will be a demonstration event that will host the greatest drivers from all over the world to compete with NASCAR's best for a gold, silver, and bronze medal at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. It's going to be an exciting moment not just for stock car racing, but motorsports in general when we get to the summer of 1996. And just to clarify, this will serve as the 1996 Winston, or the All-Star Race. This is essentially going to be that, but it will be combined with international All-Stars from all over the world, which could also help push NASCAR on a global scale as we inch closer to the 21st century. Alright, with that being said, the long wait is over, as we continue to roar through the 1990s in Sunday Night Lights. Thank you all for all of the patience and all of the waiting, and in a way, I feel like I owe you guys one. While yes, I am still planning on working on more of a divided ending, that's still on the table. Eventually that will happen. I've decided that I'm going to give you Sunday Night Lights 1996 next. That video will cover just 1996, as it will be a big year like I mentioned before. Work is already underway for that, and please follow me on Twitter and check back at posts that I make on here, as well as for more updates. I honestly can't believe I made what feels like kind of a movie with how long this video is, but in the end, I feel like it's worth it. And I got people to thank here. I gotta thank Jets Racing Designs for helping me not just paint cars, but help come up with all the lower series stuff, the logos that you just saw for the lower series, and he's really been helping out. I want to thank Faris too, which he has actually helped me create. He's helped create a new rating system that is being used and implemented. You may have noticed earlier on in 91, 92, I think we had like 20 winners both seasons. So the new rating system, we moved on from N ratings and we used a new rating system that Faris helped make, and he's been such a great help. I want to thank him too. Rose Jam Princess, they've done an excellent job helping out with the new Talladega. Stay tuned for that. We're still working on that, as well as Louisiana, and overall just helping out with ideas and making cars as well. So we're really thankful for Rose Jam. And lastly, I gotta give thanks to the guy that gave me the influence to start this all 3-4 years ago, and that is Griffdawg. So a huge thanks to him as well. And if you haven't by chance seen his What If Dale Earnhardt Was Still Alive and One More Spark series, I highly recommend you check that out. It is awesome what he was able to come up with, and I think he's inspired not just me but other people to make that. So yeah, I just wanted to give a thanks to those people because I wasn't the only one to do this, and honestly, if it weren't for them, Sunday Night Lights would not have gotten far. So seriously, I am so thankful for their help, and I'm thankful lastly to you guys for sticking around and tuning in. I know it's been a while, things happen, but I'm glad I have this out for you guys, and I know you guys have been waiting a long time, which is why I'm going to do 1996 for Sunday Night Lights next, because I feel like I owe you guys, and I care about you guys, and I'm really thankful, seriously. So thank you guys so much for checking out Sunday Night Lights, and more content is to come, as well as future Racing Infinity videos, podcasts, and of course, Gray Speed at the Track, among other things. Thank you guys so much for watching this newest edition of Sunday Night Lights. I'm Gray Speed Production, and remember that speed reigns supreme, and I'll see you in the next video.